What is up, everybody? We are about to have a conversation on Earth Day that is coming up. And I'm inviting Charlie to join us in this conversation. And not necessarily talking about the bad that's going on in the earth and the good that's going on in the earth, but what can we do? It's hard to tell what's real. It's hard to tell what's real and what's not real in this space. There's another person that wants to join.
What up, Steve? How are you, sir?
Is that a different channel?
It is. This is.
I thought I was inviting somebody else.
No, it's me, my friend. How are you? I have a few different channels. It's different ones for different projects. I'm kind of one of those that has to get into everything, different subjects, right? It's like books.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
So your question, what is, you know what, I would like to, if it's okay with you, my friend, if we could spend maybe 10% of the time identifying a challenge and then spending 80% of the time seeking a solution, I think that would be a useful use of time, a productive.
What do we do with the other 10% of the time?
No. What do you mean? I'm sorry. Yeah. My math is wrong. Don't blame me. Don't stereotype the Asian.
He's Asian. Maybe he's right. Maybe this is some deep philosophy. I wasn't being a mathematician. I was being a philosopher right there.
Okay.
Well, yeah. I wanna utilize the other 10% to just pause.
I'm with it, bro.
And not react, but just to pause. And we take time during the day to do that in our own way, but also just pause and not try to always be entertaining the audience, but just like to pause, let people marinate in that.
I can't do it, man. I can't do it. 10%'s a long time, But
well,
yeah.
I think it's just say something and then pause. It's not 10% all at once. I think it's more. I think we meditate so when we're in situations that there's potential conflict, that we pause instead of react.
Agreed.
I think the meditation alone is as important. The practical application of the meditation is the most important.
And I think therein lies the distinction between reacting versus responding, right? Where one comes from a place of being triggered, whereas another one is perhaps more reflective, right?
Yes. So we'll talk about the problem for a little while. I'm not sure. Some people will say that everything we see is going on inside of us. And I believe we can influence what we're seeing and how we're going, and we can shift our timeline based on how we master what's going on inside us to affect the world around us. So for me, the global warming argument is a lot easier than other people, because whether what's happening is man-made or if it's just a cycle, we can do things to make the earth more sustainable.
I believe that's true. But I want to challenge that approach, right? So there's this whole concept of having, making the world sustainable. But what if we shifted that just a little bit and said, what if we can live in such a way that the world actually flourishes and the world actually thrives as a result of us being here? I think that would be a more proactive approach and more inspiring,
So
right?
to understand you more, the world being sustainable is just kind of barely holding on.
It's maintaining what is, right? And for
You're
me,
talking
yeah,
so some relationships of the fifties mentality, and I'm just doing this to not to start an argument, and I'm not talking about you, but like even with people in the audience, but the of the fifties mentality of their relationships were sustainable, but they didn't necessarily excite me about thriving and living in a peaceful but awesome way. That's not all about robbing this and stealing this. It's like growing.
I don't follow when you say 50s, are you talking about age demographic or
No, I'm talking about the 1950s.
1950s? Okay.
So I'm going to go specific. I didn't want to do this, but I'll go specific towards my parents' relationship.
Okay.
It was long and sustainable, but it didn't like excite me to say, "Oh, I want one of those."
Hmm.
And after my dad passed, I saw some things that weren't necessarily of how my mom misses my dad, but I didn't see that as much when he was alive. I saw little inklings here and there, and there's certain things that I wasn't necessarily wanting to. I didn't want to like, oh, I love that my parents are having sex all the time. I didn't necessarily want to see that. So when I talk about how in this generation, and I'm talking about currently. Sadhguru says generation. He's talking about everybody alive when he talks about this generation. So when I'm talking about it's people will have like little things that happen, and all of a sudden they just get out of relationships.
Hmm.
And before, people tolerated stuff a lot more. But I think there's a balance between going for what really nourishes you and is really like being worthy of a better world, being worthy of better relationships. And I think we kind of went on a few tangents, but I think that was more what you're going towards. It's like it's something that we're not there, so it's really hard to speak about it.
Right, right. It's conceptual for sure. Um, and when I say when I'm speaking about sustainability versus thriving, right? Like when I look at the world as it is today, right? We see that there's wars going on. We see that there's poverty. We see that there's a huge disparity between the rich and poor, and that's growing, right? What's inspiring about sustaining that, right? Now, if we can envision a place that's, equitable for everybody, where people don't just burn down forests at a football field a second rate, right? When you could grow hemp instead, and because everything you could do with fossil fuels, with wood, you can use with hemp, and it'd have a more favorable impact. It would actually allow the world to thrive. Now that turns me on. You know, being able to know that I could live and breathe, and nothing has to die in order for me to live and breathe. Or nobody has to be harmed in order for me to and my family to live. Now that's to me worthy of a discussion, right? I think that's the whole concept behind Earth Day is how can we how can we how can the earth benefit from humans being here rather than being a casualty of humans being here. There's an interesting idea, right? So somebody mentioned, I forget where, but well, we know, right? Or it's been said that if bees were to suddenly vanish, right, the Earth would die within a few years, right? But if humans were to suddenly vanish, the Earth would thrive. Why is that? And does it have to be that way? You know, and that's the question I wrestle with, and those are the questions I like to address. So, in the context of what we were speaking about earlier, spend 10-20% of the time identifying a challenge and spend the rest of the time, a majority of the time, figuring it out.
So I want to go back into the challenge.
Yes.
So a little after I graduated from college, I went to one of my friend's bachelor parties in Vegas. So we went to school in Denver, and I'm from Southern California. So a lot of my friends some were still in college, and some had recently graduated. And we got we hired some strippers, and the strippers came in and they said, we want, like, with confidence, they're like, we want one of you to negotiate with us. And we all voted Ryan Goltz to be the negotiator for us. So they go in a separate room, and he negotiates with them. So I was out of college for a little while, and a lot of people were still in college. So we only had so much money that we want. I mean, like, it would be always, I would have so much money that we'd want to spend towards this. So we all put our money together, and we said, we're going to spend this much because we have this much for the trip. We're budgeting. And they're supposed to perform for 1-2 hours. So Ryan's in there, and he has this closed room, gets out. They were performed for 5 minutes. And then they all pointed at Ryan. The two strippers pointed at Ryan. And then it was like, well, he had negotiated. We still put him up to it. Then we had to put more of a budget. Then they come out here, performed a little longer, but not near as long as we thought would do it. Then they leave, and we're arguing with Ryan. I'm sitting back, and then I go, we trusted Ryan. They screwed us over intentionally and didn't perform as long as it. And we're not gonna, like, get in an argument. We're not stupid. We'll probably get killed if we, like, get in an argument and do anything to these women.
Sure.
But that's what our Congress is doing. They're having these closed door meetings, and then they're pointing fingers, and they're all part of it. So we're arguing back and forth. So how, and I know you have some certain ways, and I know I have certain ways. How do we get off of that? There used to be a commercial, tastes great, less filling, it was for Coors Light or something, and you just argue back and forth. Tastes great, like, but they're both saying that it's awesome, but they're like, tastes great, less. But how do we get out of that paradigm of just seeing, and I'm going towards you, but this isn't true. I'm like, seeing you as my enemy because you're part Asian. How do we break past that? Or you seeing me as an enemy because I'm African American, or you seeing me as an enemy because I'm really good looking.
Well, I on the last show I was on with you, right? We spoke about JFK and his top scientist. What would it take to get the United States to the moon and back? And the scientist said, the will to do it, right? And that's also, I think, the approach we have to take to overcome any challenge diplomatically. You'd have to have the will to have the hard discussions, right? And the will to to put it in the words of one of my teachers, to look for the angel, right? Look for the innocence, look for the compassion, namaste, to look for the divine in the other person, and then meet there. right? Because the divine in one person and another probably wouldn't resort to violence, right? Because they're divine. They're above that. So that's where I would start, you know.
I was
In the context of your situation with your friend Ryan, because I don't know if everybody does this, but I was in a similar situation at a bachelor party in Las Vegas. And of course, the strippers, this isn't their first barbecue. They know what they're doing. My question to you is, how long was Ryan gone in this discussion? And
I don't
is it
go.
possible that he received some type of favor, right? If they said
I would say
much
for
like
Ryan was a lot of things, but he wasn't that. But
okay,
that's a good conversation.
motherfucker's a man
Are
surrounded by strippers.
are our leaders selling us out in these closed door meetings?
Yes, I'm gonna say it, right? You can't. My general philosophy is this: you can't trust the government, except you could trust the government to be the government, right? And the government always acts on its own behalf, always. And that therein lies the challenge, right? When and this is why I always encourage young people to get into politics, to be active, to stay active, to hold people accountable, um, because they're gonna fleece. You know, there's something in it for them, right? There's always something in it for them. So the cliche is this: people go into politics to do good, but end up doing well. They don't. I wasn't the one that made that up, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But we could see that. I mean, right now, there's a reason why Elizabeth Warren is proposing that lawmakers don't have stocks in particular companies, right? Because that, by definition, is like insider trading because they're influencing laws, they're influencing policy, and it makes it highly suspect, doesn't it? Their intentions.
Yeah. I feel, and I might be naive on this, that society's made up of a lot of incentives that are the difference of us. Okay, we're talking about thriving, we're talking about sustainability, but
Hmm.
there's lots of incentives that are down here, not even to the sustainability plays. And going back to the stripper situation, why are we so apt to choose sides? Because if you didn't like Trump doing stuff, there's lots of questions on the Hunter Biden things,
Hmm.
and I see more on that because I'm putting him in my place, but also I'm separating myself from those people even more and finding ways. I choose to be the grown up in the room, not trying to go to somebody in an ivory tower to fix that, because I challenge all of us. I challenge the audience and I challenge everybody that I come around to be the most influential. You be the most influential person in your life.
Hmm.
In the worst economy, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, there's no jobs." That's never the case. And you
It's
only
plenty
need
of
one.
jobs.
Yeah, yeah. You only need one job. You don't need the full economy to shift. I mean, you need one job or two jobs or three jobs, but you don't need the entire economy to shift. There's a lot of bad women out there. There's a lot of good women out there. The more energy you give to talking about all the bad women out there, the more you're going to see that.
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's all about what vibration you're on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, ultimately, if you want to, if we want to go there, yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to know your thoughts on this. Okay, so since we can agree that, you know, vibration is a thing, right? So all the wars, all the conflict, you know, everything that's uncool that's going on in the world, is that influencing the vibration of the common man in such
Well,
a way that that we become tainted and we become negative because there's negativity out there that's predominant.
so I would say, and you're going to hate this, the philosopher in me will say it's yes and no. Because the algorithm that God or the universe or source created is, and one of the best things that's working is that chaos, that common enemy, that seeing that stuff that's really bad, that division creates the connection too.
Right. It creates the, well, when you say connection, I'm assuming in this is that you're talking about the opportunity, right? The conflict, the conflict offers opportunity for a resolution.
Correct. So for instance, a lot of Jewish people have spent, I mean, Hitler's been gone for a long time. A lot of Jewish people have spent a lot of time going out to different worlds talking about the Hitlers of the world because of this horrible human that had lived on this planet for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So that common enemy has made has moved people to, when a lot of people try to hide and like to try to talk about this stuff doesn't exist, this common enemy has opened things up. For instance, Trump. There's no Me Too movement without Trump.
Right.
That's what I liked about Trump
Yeah.
because
He
people are
stir
like, go
he
ahead.
definitely stirred up the pot, you know, and that's what I'm saying. You know, like it, you know, in the history of the world, there had to be a Trump, right? I mean, it's almost mathematical. There had to be a Hitler, there had to be a Roosevelt. Otherwise, they wouldn't have shown up. If we want to, if we want to come from there, but every 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 conflict. I mean, Frederick Douglass says, right, without struggle, there's no progress, right? And so it is in many ways good that Trump showed up when he did, because now it brings things to the surface that can be talked about and hopefully met through discussion, you know, with an intelligent discussion, and then resolved. And
So
resolved is the key word.
so I want to go into the the war in Ukraine of how
Hmm.
that shifted me.
Okay.
So earlier at the beginning of this year or the end of last year, hearing Putin talk about what was going to happen, it hit me really hard in my nervous system. And when when they started going into that area, I got a good feeling, to hear me out, because people freaking were caring about that they were not tolerating this. That was a beautiful thing. People like cared, just like because of the division that Trump created, and talking about the Me Too, and instead of trying to sleep it under the carpet, people were
Hmm.
like actually caring about that war wasn't a good thing. Necessary
Yeah.
to a certain extent.
Is it though?
Necessary. What?
Is it though?
Under the paradigm, and that the fact that there are pieces of shit walking this planet, yes.
Okay.
Like, I'll tell you where I stand. I don't have I don't own a gun. Never will own a gun. But I like the fact that my neighbor, I don't know which neighbors, but that somebody doesn't feel like could just come to my house because I might have a gun.
Right.
Um, So that's how I feel. I feel about the same thing about that, about war to a certain extent. Do I think it's a high
It's
vibrating
interesting you
way
bring
of
that
going
up.
about something? Yeah.
No, it's interesting that you bring up the whole neighbor analogy, because that is what was, from my understanding, Putin's justification for going into Ukraine, right? Because NATO, all right. So to bring this back, what I understand of conflict is this, right? So after World War II, we got we started, we were involved in the Cold War, right? The Soviet Union versus NATO, right? And somewhere in the 80s, the Soviet Union dissolved, which led to the creation of Ukraine and Serbia and Yugoslavia and all that. Um, at which point, I feel that if that threat is gone, if the Soviet Union threat is gone, then does there need to be a NATO, right? Because NATO was created to counter the Soviet Union. With the Soviet Union gone, one could argue that NATO doesn't need to be there. Now, bring it back to, maybe 6 years ago. From what I understand, NATO was courting Ukraine and saying, like, you should be part of NATO. And you know what happens then? And Putin expressed disfavor to that, because who wants, if their neighboring country is part of an organization that wants to see the demise of Russia, you probably wouldn't want NATO weapons in that country. I mean, would you? Like, say, for example, if you knew that there was somebody out to kill you or somebody in your family, would you want them moving next door to you? Moving into the house, you know, next door to you? Probably not. I wouldn't, right? Nobody wants nobody wants a child molester in their neighborhood. Nobody wants a halfway house in their neighborhood, right? So I can understand, if that was truly Putin's argument, I could understand where he's coming from. Do I agree with his his solution? No, but also understand, as a former military man, is that um, war is a result of failed diplomacy. It's a result of people not seeing the divine in each other and saying, you know what, we could talk this out and work this out. And what's crazy is that in my study of military leaders, because that's what I did when I was in the military, it's like, all good generals, right, know the horrors of war. And the best way to win a war is not to engage in one in the first place. They don't want to go to war. Nobody wants to go to war. You know who wants to go to war? Politicians, because they're not in the front line. You know?
And they're in the
And
back.
and they have a vested interest in military organizations,
Yeah, for sure.
right?
That's what I was gonna say.
Raytheon, Lockheed, they all have stock in that shit.
I think it was what's his name? George Carlin said that. I think it was him. He said that politicians should be like NASCAR. They should have the people that they like. The NASCAR has like the all the like if the
Patches,
motor
sponsors.
patches like on their suits.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that would make it more, definitely more transparent. There was a joke. There was a joke about like the Mexican police, right? Saying to an American police, yeah, we're corrupt, but at least we're honest about it.
For sure.
And in many ways, there's safety in that, right? Just like the government. Once you can see past the bullshit and say, like, I could trust the government to be untrustworthy, then you question everything they do. They lied to us about weed. So what else do they lie to us about?
I want to go to something that shows the tie of this. It definitely shows the problem and the challenge, but it
Mm-hmm.
also I believe that war as far as for the Earth Day and sustainability and thriving, I believe thriving for sure, but even for sustainability, I believe war is like the biggest contributor to pollution. But nobody ever
Oh
talks.
yeah,
Nobody
definitely.
talks about that.
Yeah, I mean, how much energy does an aircraft carrier take, right? Or a fleet of aircraft carriers, or you know, how much fuel does a jet burn? Not to mention the destruction of the material carnage. It's crazy. It's
For sure.
crazy. We're going to see a lot of changes in the environment as a result of this war, because this war it's on a larger scale than the war on Iraq. It's on a larger scale than the war in Afghanistan, right? And that went on for 20 years. This war has a potential of going on for that long, and has a potential of becoming worse. I mean, so part of my business is in marketing, right? And in design, which is, and marketing, design, advertising, all that is basically propaganda, right? And so I urge everyone to study the history of propaganda, because propaganda only works if you don't know that it's propaganda. Okay? So coming from there, when I don't read local papers and I don't subscribe to the news, I figure if it's important, I'll hear about it somehow, right? But when you look at the papers, at the headlines, you all I see is propaganda to prep the United States people to justify getting into war. Genocide, atrocities, war crimes, right? Just on the Russian side, but it's likely that atrocities and genocide and war crimes are being committed on both sides, right? But we only hear the side against the Russians. Why? To trigger our emotions so that we react and say, yes, let's get behind Ukraine. And now we have a world war.
So I want to, and you're gonna probably think I'm a dick for doing this, but I want
Yeah,
to take you up
please.
on you're on your own challenge. Is let's go back to the solution.
Yes. Yes, I'd rather do that.
So when I found out about Ukraine, I that bothered me, and there's something that bothered me for a while that I wasn't bringing to the surface was the fact that I didn't see police officers as my brothers and sisters. I was always good and been good for a while about having interactions with police and stopping things that I was a third party, just being able to stop things that were and aligning them with peace before they got out of hand by just a misunderstanding. Was just being able to intervene, just being walking on the street with no shoes, just being in the middle of something. Sometimes just doing that. But
Hmm.
randomly running into police at a coffee shop, I just like didn't see them on my brother or sister. And that there's a conflict for me. And Ukraine was the catalyst that I really went in and had an ego death, and that's resulted in police breathing for peace.
Hmm.
And it all started with just 2 months ago, 3 months ago. My heart rate was beating like I had a lion chasing me, just when I was offering to buy a police officer coffee.
Hmm.
So before a lot of these transformations change, we got to let go of the ego and know, hey, I may not be totally right on the beliefs that I have. Are you willing to die on that hill? Because I don't see an alpha dog as somebody that has to get in the fight with them because they bump into them. I don't
Hmm.
see that as being a tough person.
Hmm.
Maybe strong, maybe do it, but with a very, very fragile ego. Like if I'm me, fighting to defend myself is like way at the end option. stepping in for other people, but also when I step in for other people, I'm I'm in a place that I'm aligning with peace. I don't want this person that's has a lot of trauma that's probably yelling at the woman or the man that lives works at Starbucks. I don't want to just like all of a sudden like punch them out because of that. I
Hmm.
want to find a way to resolve this without taking it to a much worse place, because that's what people are doing. They're taking
Without
something small.
escalating, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
So the lesson of the strippers, great lesson, because I learned from that,
Right.
and that wasn't necessarily a bad situation. We could have made that a lot worse.
Sure.
I mean, we were barely out of college, fucking tons of testosterone flowing through our bodies.
Not
We
even
were
in your hometown. You
bad.
think you could, how much do you think you could stir up, right?
Yeah, yeah. And that could have been a 100% just escalated to another level.
Hmm.
But also speaking and feeling into the divine of people, and like even the people that work in your office. Like I have the guy that edits my videos, and his name is Muhammad Ali, and I call him Champ, and he gets dopamine for that. And I told him only time I'm ever gonna get mad at you when you don't know how fucking awesome you are. I was like, don't ask me this. I was like, I don't know how to edit videos. That's why I hired you. Like, I know nothing about editing videos. I know how to produce content.
Right, right, right.
Go, there's somewhere inside of you that is totally awesome. It's like, well, I'm from this area, and we don't. I was like, I understand that to survive in that area, you had to talk about. But when you're talking to me, think of yourself as like a really awesome individual that can figure shit out.
Word.
And we have to have those conversations less now. And
Why?
and what was that?
Why? Why do you feel that?
Because I'm building him up, and I'm not creating a codependency that he always I like. I'm teaching him how to build himself up.
Right. Okay. So I'm sorry. I'm getting lost here. So, what's your point of the story? What
So
discussion do you feel that?
when we're speaking to the peace inside of somebody,
Hmm.
or I was talking about where I'm speaking into the whatever you want to call it, the Jedi, the superhero that's
The
inside of him.
higher
That
self is probably it's
yeah,
what's used.
the higher self, the higher self.
Yeah, man.
So that peace that you were talking about, and talking to the earth, feeling the earth, sitting on the grass, taking a breath, all that stuff is so hippie drama type stuff, but it is so important. I think
Yeah.
where the hippies made a mistake is they were not in the world. They were just outsiders talking about this stuff, doing about it, complaining about others, but they weren't going into the world and being what they were actually moving towards. And I'm generalizing,
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely generalizing because
but
I don't know.
I would like to see a hippie cop. I would like to
Well,
I would like to see.
I
Go
don't
ahead.
think there can be because I mean,
Maybe the world,
by
thriving world.
definition, hippies are anti-establishment, right?
Maybe in the thriving world that we're moving towards, that we said is a concept
Hmm.
that we're doing. Maybe that's a possibility.
So what if we consider that there is a world that we could create where cops aren't necessary, right? We have a value system that is so sound. We have laws that are so equitable that they don't need enforcing because everything's cool. When I was at Standing Rock, I went to Standing Rock, gosh, God, it's well over 5 years. I want to say 5 years now. You know, I went to stand with the Native Americans, and one of the policies is another, you don't tell anyone what to do. You know, it's up to a person's integrity to do the right thing.
Weren't they just telling you what to do?
No, It was an invitation.
But they're saying no. They're saying you don't tell
Yeah.
anybody.
Well, in the orientation, that's what they were saying.
I'm messing.
No,
I'm
no, I
messing.
get it. I get it. I get it. And everybody falls short because it's such a a bizarre concept for people who don't live that way, right? So the hippie way of life is crazy for the person that works 9 to 5, or the person that's in the military, or the person that depends on the government to tell them what to do, right? When I in my world travels, I've encountered and I've traveled with the Rainbow family, which is probably pretty close to what I imagine hippie life was like, and even in that circle, you know, there was conflict that arose out of people just not being cool, you know. But it's a way of being. You know what I like, what I really enjoy about you and the Cannabis Wellness Party and everything that you're doing is it's really emphasizing or introducing a way of being, right? A peaceful cop. Wow, what a concept. That's a way of being, right? So why not take it a step further and say, well, why do we need cops in the first place if we all just are cool
And
with each other?
and you could tell that I run that event, but I'm not really running that event.
Right. You're holding the space.
I'm holding the space, and I intentionally created the event so because I know that most of the time you can't get people to do that. They're gonna want to do that. Like one of the events,
Is
I
is that
I, t- I
is
stopped
that
the whole. Go ahead.
no, I'm wondering when you say you can't, I'm wondering if that's a limiting belief.
I would say 100%, and I would say some of it's based in reality, some of it's based in
Whose
just
reality?
what was that?
Whose reality? Right?
See,
Because your reality is going to be different from the reality of somebody else that comes from a different context, comes from a different culture.
no, no, I understand, but but that doesn't necessarily make it right because I think you're pushing me towards defending that, and I'm kind of trying to get into a space that like I don't know. I could say, oh yeah, most people would agree with me, but that doesn't mean it's right. Still, that doesn't mean it's right.
No, because that falls into the bandwagon fallacy, right?
Oh yeah, yeah,
A, a,
for
a
sure.
billion people could say such and such is a dick, and which makes me which which is one of the reasons why I travel to places like Israel and Palestine to see what's going on there, which is why I travel to Standing Rock to see with my own eyes what the hell's going on. So this whole thing with Ukraine, everybody's taking sides for Ukraine or against Ukraine. Well, go over there, take a look for yourself, and then see where you stand in what you see. You know, that's my statement. There's no villain in this. We are all villains in this, and we are all saviors. We have the opportunity to save it. You know, so
And
I'm
and
so
and no, it's an experiment, and with any experiment, the Cannabis Wellness Party is an experiment, and with any experiment, I could me I could control it to make it whatever I wanted it to be based on how I conduct the experiment. So that's what you're saying is I know that about myself. That's why I run Cannabis Wellness Party the way I do
hmm
because the I know doing it another way would potentially work better, but it wouldn't be
better
what
for
I
who?
yeah, but it wouldn't be what I wanted to create.
Right,
Better mainstream standards of the
right,
sustainability. I'm moving towards more towards the thriving
right,
place. And the reason
right.
why I want people to experience what they experience at the Cannabis Wellness Party without me telling them what they're going to experience. And I've seen it's been like 50% of the group comes in is consistent and 50% is random.
Right, right.
And they all fall into it without much guidance for it.
Right. Well, that there's I feel like to simplify what you're saying is just basically letting the the wellness party develop organically as it should, right? Or as it could.
For sure.
Yeah.
So going back to let's talk about the earth.
Yeah.
And
So let me ask you a question. So how can we live in such a way that the world thrives as a result of us being here?
so the thing about plants, plant life, there's plant wisdom. That's
Yes,
what we are using cannabis. But
absolutely.
say that this tree, these 5 trees over here have some sort of poison. They'll die off just to protect thousands of other trees.
Okay.
And there's that wisdom and that connection that's happening. We humans, I don't feel we have to do that, and we might be doing that. But by tapping into plant life and tapping into nature and seeing the beauty in nature and having that ripple into the research that we're doing, us as a police officer, us as a judge, us as all these different and I don't think what I'm saying is right or wrong, but I think it's the building blocks to get us to thriving.
It's definitely one I could see. I feel like the intention is there, right? The intention is there, and what I feel like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that when one realizes their communion with the earth and with each other, then there's no real need to be uncool. Everything will flourish as a result. The challenge is, how do we get people to recommit to that communion? That the earth, that we are not separate from the earth, that it's a symbiotic relationship, that the earth, that there's a way we could live where the earth can thrive and you and your family and all your loved ones can thrive. The earth will be okay. The earth can sustain a human population far greater than what's present.
100%.
You know, and by sustain, I mean, like, it would, you know, it would allow us to thrive, but we can't, but not if we continue in the direction that we're going, right? And I find that in the Cannabis Wellness Party, one of the dynamics that you witness is because of the healing energy of the plant, right? There's a reason. There's a reason why freaking Bob smoked weed, man. You know, it elevates you. It takes you to this other place where you could see beyond the ego, where you could let the ego rest and say, you know what? Let me just fucking lively up myself and be cool. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
when people go to the wellness party, the 2 times that I've been there, you know, there's a little bit of anxiety that I experience when new people come to the circle, but after we smoke a bowl or after we pass a J, man, it's all good. And I attribute that highly, highly, highly on the healing properties of the plant. You know, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why it was not just for the industrial solutions that marijuana can provide, you know, in terms of fuel and building material and all that, but it has the potential to unify. And the government doesn't want that, man. Right? Because a united people is a strong people. And one of the first rules of war is divide and conquer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they criminalize it. They tell us for years, for decades, that smoking weed is bad. You know, it's the devil. But again, I ask, if they lie to us about that, what else does the government lie to us about? The war, the policies. I just learned something that was really disturbing. Okay, so New Mexico had a congressman who's now the Department of the Interior, Holland, I believe is her name, and she comes from a Native American um, background. Her descent, she's a descendant from natives, and from what I understand, um, she is okay with opening up public lands for oil drilling. And I'm like, what the fuck? Right? What the fuck? And she said the American people deserve, a return on their investment. And I'm like, how is that a return on the investment? You know, your people fought and died on this land for land, to keep it natural, to keep it wild. And so it goes back to, like, people get into politics to do good and end up doing well. Because somewhere in that conversation, somebody is benefiting, you know?
For sure.
And my guess is that it's somebody she knows, if not her directly. Right? So
It's sad. It's
what
sad.
what we have to do as a more enlightened people, right, is to stay active, to get into the office and be open to the ideas of other young people, because young people have the open minds. See, there's this thing called psychosclerosis, hardening of the psyche, one-way thinking, and that happens naturally through age. It's just like concepts that just people are more willing to die than change their mind, right? Psychosclerosis, man. Don't be that way.
So the thing about that, and one of the reasons why people said you shouldn't smoke a lot of cannabis before you're 25 is because your brain hasn't fully matured
Developed.
into 25. And I think you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying that's a positive thing.
I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying question it, right? So say, for example, in Europe, I don't know if it's true now, but when I was a younger man, I was tripping on here. Here in America, we have to be like 21 years old to drink, where in Europe they drink at 16, right? So they actually learn to hold their alcohol before they're able to drive, unlike here, right? Which is why but but we also know that alcohol is toxic, right? So there's a lot of Europeans that partake in alcohol and partook in alcohol when they were younger, and they're okay. So so how bad can cannabis be?
I wasn't the part I was going more towards is your brain's not developed until
Yeah,
25. Shouldn't have put the
yeah.
cannabis part. Um,
That there's
I,
probably truth to that. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I
but
could.
I'm saying that's also what you're talking about. As you get older, your brain hardens and you're less receptive for certain things. So also that your brain hasn't fully developed, that might be a positive. I mean, it's like it's one of those things. Is it bad? Is it good? It's not necessarily bad.
Well,
Um, Go
the
ahead.
when I refer to psychosclerosis, I'm not talking about the brain itself, physically getting harder. It's more of an attitude, the unwillingness to learn more, the unwillingness to be open to new and fresh ideas, right? Which is one of the challenges we have right now, and is that there's a lot of older folks involved in politics who are unwilling to change, who are unwilling to keep an open mind. The only one that I feel would be counter to that is probably Bernie Sanders. He's pretty freaking open-minded for somebody of his, um, of his age demographic, right?
Yeah.
That's why one of the reasons why I think Obama was so inspiring in the beginning is because he was young, he was receptive to new ideas, homeboy bald, you know what I mean? He was a cool cat, right? And then you have Donald Trump, who at one point in the 80s was really fucking cool, right? Everybody wanted to be on his show, The Apprentice. It was cool, you know? But he brought with him the ideas of somebody from the 80s, which is consumption, right? Greed is good, and that has no place in 2020. Has no place in that, man. Right? That's outdated thinking, and that's what I'm referring to in terms of psychosclerosis. The opposite of which is what I would probably call neuroplasticity, the willingness to be open to new concepts and new ideas. Right? The world is going to change because of technology more in the next 5 years than it has in the last 100 years. How is somebody with a firm mindset, unwilling to grasp new ideas, gonna thrive in that type of environment? How are they going to serve the people in a landscape that is shifting faster than they have ever experienced? They're not. They're not.
And the biology, you talk about that shift, but we've already been in the middle of a shift that isn't going to be that great, but it's been like in the last 10 years, it's been a very big shift.
In the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's 2 years. Yeah. So we like our biology hasn't even caught up with the last
No.
3 shifts.
No.
So breathing and being peaceful and there's going to be a lot of resistance for it.
There is.
Maybe that's a lot of the stuff we're seeing is that resistance.
Of course it is, man. There was one of my yoga teachers maybe 4 years ago shared with me that she was an early practitioner in her community with her friends, and people used to call cops on them when they were practicing yoga in the park because it was so fucking weird to them, to normal people. They're just going around stretching, right? They're just sitting in a circle stretching. No reason to call the cops on them, right? But that's what, what's happening. There are people who are embracing change. There has to be change.
I didn't see that specifically, but I saw a lot of push back with yoga for kids.
Yeah.
A lot of push.
Of course, man. Of course. You're gonna see that in a society that's so afraid of change, and that's what's I feel that's the one of the biggest flaws in American politics, is that it's shifting to a place where fear is the policy. Right? You could see that especially in the right, right? In the conservative side. They're afraid of change. They have no real platform other than watch out for this, watch out for that. I
see conservative by nature is we have it good, but I see fear being sold on both sides.
Fear is being sold on both sides completely. And that's what I'm saying. The politics of today is really fear-mongering. It's like, it's crazy. It's Machiavellian.
Going back to the solution, how do I, as a citizen, rise above that?
There's a saying, if everybody swept their own porch, the whole world would be clean. Right? So what I would say to you as an individual is keep being a light. Keep being a light, because no matter how dark it is, it doesn't matter how dark the world grows, one candle will still illuminate a whole lot. Right? So if one candle can light up somebody to be another candle and light up another person to be another candle, that in itself, that way of being, I think that is where hope lives in for humanity.
That
The prac
I don't know if you know. In addition to doing the cannabis wellness parties and other things, I do drive a Lyft driver, and my car is like decked out with like stickers of a whole bunch of like positive messages.
Oh,
And I've seen my Lyft for a while as the ground zero for what you're talking right there.
absolutely,
And
man.
but also I was like, well, and that's kind of like a couple
Are you
times I've
put
driven.
are you pushing
I've driven.
propaganda on your
Yeah,
Lyft
yeah.
people?
No, it's transparent propaganda, and there's a lot of pauses, and I give them the space to take it in whatever direction that they want to take it into. But
Word.
sometimes I've had police in my car, and I give them the opportunity to really have those transparent conversations about things, and I let them consent to it. You don't have to have this conversation, and I've had some good conversations, and then that I said, well, this is an illusion that in my small mind I only think that we should have these conversations here, and then I challenge myself to bring this world that I've created in here to match the rest of my life and let
Yeah.
it rip into other people's lives.
That's what that's what it's about, you know. Unfortunately, um, you know, how you live, how you are inside. If you're peaceful inside, your external world will be peaceful, right? So the challenge with our contemporary society is that there's a lot of people of great influence who are not at peace. So they create, because of their influence, a world that is not at peace.
There's a challenge for a lot of people in observing, and actually the people that are up at that level, that popularity doesn't mean you're right.
No,
Pop,
absolutely. It almost means you're wrong.
what was that?
Being overly popular almost means you're fucking wrong, right? That your concepts could be challenged, should be challenged.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? I don't know. I would love for your audience, for you people, man. You know, I'd love to pick up this conversation. Like, look me up on Instagram, look me up on Twitter. Twitter's great to have dialogue like this. Um, yeah, for sure. You know, I'd love to know what challenges you guys see and what solutions you guys propose, right? In business, that's one of the things. Like, you don't go to your, you know, to your higher up, to your manager or your boss just complaining, right? That's coming up with problems. Propose a solution. Come with the problem. Hey man, there's this war over here. Well, what's the solution to it, man? Right? Global warming. Yeah, well, what's the solution? My solution is plant trees as much as you can. Plant trees, plant weed, plant fucking everything. Draw the carbon down back into the earth where it belongs. You know, check your consumption of plastic. Now I know it's hard. We all fall short, but do the best you can, you know? And that's the only way we're going to make a difference, right? Be the light. You know how we were talking about that light in the darkness? Be the light in your organization. Be the light as you drive your Lyft, right? Be willing, open the space, hold the space for that dialogue. And maybe you can change somebody's mind.
And don't react. Give everybody the opportunity to evolve. Don't
Right,
react
right. Well,
to what they may
you,
say, or
reaction is a human thing, right? To say don't react is like saying don't be human,
how
right?
about be
I
more
would say
sincere?
just check yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
observe, take a step back, and ask, is this true? Right? Didn't we have this conversation? Was this you that I had this conversation with?
I think it was Mickey.
Mickey? Okay. Yeah, they brought this up. Oh, no, it was somebody else. But basically, whenever you feel like you're triggered, take a step back and say, is this true? What they're saying, is this true? You know, keep questioning, is this true? Is this true? You know, the person might not be an asshole. Putin might not be an asshole. He just might be traumatized somehow, right? Zelensky might not be a hero. He might be a bad guy. You know, he might be a sellout. We don't know until we ask the question.
Is
What's
that
that?
true? I was doing what you said.
Yeah,
I said,
I don't know.
that's true.
Is it? Is it? I don't know. I don't know. And that's
True.
that opens a space for the dialogue that's much needed, right? Like it, yeah. On the Ukraine note, Oliver Stone, as you know, he's a filmmaker. He created a documentary. I think it was released 2015. It's called Ukraine on Fire. That's worth watching. And he also has a movie, a documentary called the True History of the United States of America, something to that effect, which is also worth watching because it raises questions. And these days, with so much uncertainty, you have to ask questions, right?
Yeah. So
You have to ask questions.
I'm going to cut you off here because it's about to cut off any second. So do you have any final thoughts?
I'm going to echo Krishnamurti in saying, be the light onto yourself in a world that's growing ever darker. That's it, man.
Or we're just becoming aware of it, so we can become more lighter.
Well, that's part of it too. And when it comes to like making decisions, go follow your heart. I've worked with different Native American elders, and most of them say, like, if you're in a place of questioning, follow your heart. And even if you fuck up, at least you followed your heart. You know what I mean? At least you followed your heart.
I gave a ride to a doctor that did heart transplants. And I asked him that question, is there anything based in science to the term follow your heart? And he said, it's interesting that you said that, because recently I did a heart transplant for this woman that got a heart from this young boy that had died. And in that process, behind the scenes, they got the family to meet it. So the mother that lost a son met this lady, and she brought Starburst candy. And the lady said, it's interesting, since I got this heart 2 weeks ago, I've been craving this candy. So your heart craves things. There's more thinking going on in your heart and your gut and in each individual cell than there is in your brain.
It's wisdom, right? It's the same wisdom that's in a fucking acorn that produces a fucking oak, right? Who's to say that our cells don't carry that same wisdom, that same memory? Yeah, man. Good fucking.
Science is even caught up to that one.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yeah, sure.
Can't wait till we have another session, man. Let's make it soon. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much.
For those of one more thing, man. I don't know if y'all listen to Bob Marley. I hope you do, but listen to his words. You know, I've been listening to him for like decades now. But his words are more relevant now than ever. So listen to the lyrics, man. That will be
Survivor's a really good album.
The Survival album is good. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, all right, man. Sure. Aloha, y'all.
For sure.
Be the change.
Be the change.
Mahalo.